Hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin, check. You already know. Let's go. Golden Blooded is a college football YouTube channel for entertainment. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into our next college football video. Don't forget to send gear to represent your team. The address is P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. We are back from a great day of family fun. We went over to Sky Zone, and the kids jumped around, had a great time. You got to take time for family, guys. You got to take time for family. So I work my schedule around that, so this is going to be a later than usual video, and of course I'm sticking with the idea that I've been going with, and that's looking at comments in my comments section and making a video out of a comment idea that I like. So keep that in mind. Keep the comments coming, and make sure that if you think you have a good video idea, put it in the comment, and I just might pick your comment. This comment video idea comes from Jesse Wilson. Here's what his comment said. Here in idea video gold, bro. You might want to slow down on your texting. I will say that. Big 12 somehow get Washington and Oregon, join them, and bring along Gonzaga for basketball. What do you think? Well, I think that's a great idea. I think that's a scenario that not a lot of people are talking about, including myself. I think we're all assuming that eventually Washington and Oregon do end up in the Big Ten, and I do think that's the most likely scenario. But there is a scenario where the Big 12 could actually bring in Washington and Oregon, and I think they have a real chance. Now, right now, the Pac-12 looks okay. The playoffs have expanded to 12 teams, meaning the Pac-12 will have opportunities to get into the playoffs. Basically guaranteed whoever wins the Pac-12 will make the playoffs. But I do think that they're still in danger of getting picked apart. UCLA and USC are headed off to the Big Ten, and we already know that Washington and Oregon have put in their applications to the Big Ten, and the Big Ten said thanks, but no thanks for now. Maybe later, but for now we're going to have to say no. But there's something interesting that I've been hearing more and more, and that's one of the conditions that USC and UCLA accepted the invite to the Big Ten was do not allow Oregon into the Big Ten. I'm not sure about Washington, but I know that they might not want Oregon into the Big Ten. I don't know if that's 100% true, but it's definitely a possibility, meaning Oregon could get locked out of the Big Ten, and maybe Washington coming to the Big Ten hinges on Oregon going to the Big Ten as well, so they might be locked out as well. I'm not sure on that, but it's definitely possible. And I've talked about in the past where the Big Ten could actually want Stanford and Cal, or they get Stanford, and that's enough to finally entice Notre Dame. Now, what we've heard from the Big Ten is we are not expanding right now. It is not happening. We are good as is, especially from the Ohio State leaders and the higher-ups. They're saying, nope, we don't want to expand anymore. We're good as is. So this might not happen now or in the near future, but I think it's a possibility that could happen, say, in the next 5 to 10 years, something like that. So let's say the Big Ten does go out and get Stanford. Somehow they attract Notre Dame, or they get Stanford and Cal. Remember, Stanford and Cal have amazing academics and research. A lot of money comes with that. So they would be of great value to the Big Ten. Here's another thing that people are not thinking about. Cal and Stanford would give USC and UCLA more travel partners for the schedule in the Big Ten. That is a big time perk for UCLA and USC because their schedule is going to be absolutely brutal. If the Big Ten can bring in Cal and Stanford, they would probably make those 4 California schools play each other every year. Well, I say make, but I think those California schools would be more than okay with playing each other every single year, especially USC. You know, they're getting basically free wins against Cal and Stanford. Probably the same thing with UCLA because UCLA is looking like a really good team. So it helps as far as wins, and it also helps with traveling. So it is definitely possible that the Big Ten could bring in Cal and Stanford and not Oregon and Washington. Now, when Oregon and Washington, if this does happen with Oregon and Washington, when they find out that they are blackballed from the Big Ten, it is not happening whatsoever, and the Big Ten is getting 2 more members from the Pac-12. They're in danger of getting to that magical number of either having to add more members or disbanding. That magical number, according to the bylaws, is 6. When a conference gets down to 6 members, they must either add more members or they must disband. A conference cannot exist with just 6 members. That is why Conference USA went out and made some desperate moves. They got in some FCS teams. They brought in Liberty. I mean, a lot of people are like, why did they bring that in? Why didn't they try to get somebody else? Well, they couldn't get anybody else. And if they didn't get somebody, Conference USA would have had to disband. So the Pac-12 gets down to 6 teams. Either they got to add members or they have to disband. And right now they're at 10. And let's say the Big Ten does get Cal and Stanford. That's down to 8. And Washington and Oregon are like, this is too close for comfort. And we don't want those Mountain West teams in the Pac-12. That's going to make our conference look even weaker. We're going to head to the Big 12. That's how Jesse Wilson's scenario comes true right there. Cal and Stanford go to the Big Ten. Oregon and Washington start getting a little more nervous. They're like, we don't want those Mountain West teams in here. That's going to make the Pac-12 look even weaker. We're off to the Big 12, and the Big 12's like, come on, we will take you. And on top of that, you add Gonzaga for basketball. And the Big 12 goes from being an okay conference to be one of the better conferences. You add Washington, Oregon, yeah, that helps drastically with the losses of Oklahoma and Texas, especially since they've already added BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF. So the Big 12 would look like a much, much better conference. But I think they would bring some more teams along with Washington, Oregon. Now, whether it's 2 more teams or 4 more teams, I don't know. They could add the Arizona schools, Arizona and Arizona State, along with Oregon and Washington. Or, this is my favorite alternative, they could add Utah and Colorado along with Washington and Oregon. Or, they could add all 4 of the 3/4 of the 4 corner schools, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado, with Oregon and Washington. I actually think that is a big time possibility. Now, there's always that other option of the ACC disbands, and if that happens, then I really, really hope that the Big 12 adds some teams from the ACC, because I've tried to make this crystal clear. I don't dislike the Big 12 as a conference. I think it's a good conference. I just don't like being in the Big 12 because of travel and because we don't get to play our rivals. Now, if the ACC dissolves and we were able to go get Pitt, Syracuse, Louisville, and Virginia Tech, that would be a perfect scenario. I would be in heaven, and I would be saying, yes, let's stay in the Big 12. I don't care about the ACC anymore. That's really the only reason I've ever wanted West Virginia in the ACC. I don't think that the ACC is a better conference than the Big 12. I just like our rivals as far as being able to play them on a yearly basis. On top, I'll add this. If West Virginia was able to schedule Pitt and Virginia Tech on a yearly basis, then I would be okay with the Big 12 not bringing anybody in from the ACC. You see what I'm saying? As long as West Virginia gets to play their rivals every year, it doesn't matter to me. That's all I want. So even if we were able to schedule them in the out-of-conference year after year after year, then I would be great with that. I would be fine with that. That's why I've loved watching West Virginia football the past couple years, except for the losing. I don't like that part. But we have gotten to play Pitt and Virginia Tech, and I have missed that. And you can tell the fan base has missed that as well. Not just West Virginia's fan base, but Pitt's fan base and Virginia Tech's fan base. The Big 12 could most certainly get Oregon and Washington, but only if the Big Ten does not get Oregon and Washington. The Big Ten decides to go after Cal and Stanford, which is a real possibility because there is big time, and I mean big time money as far as research and academics go, that would go along with Cal and Stanford over to the Big Ten. And travel partners and making the schedule just a little bit easier for USC and UCLA. Because are you listening to me, UCLA and USC fans? It will take some time, some adjusting for you to actually have some great success in the Big Ten. I don't think you're going to march immediately into the Big Ten and run it over and have great success. Just ask Nebraska. They still really haven't found their notch. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you. I think eventually USC will be fine and they will be able to win the Big Ten in the future, but not immediately. But that would greatly help the Big 12 if the Big Ten goes out and gets Cal and Stanford, and then Oregon and Washington are like, we are not staying in the Pac-12, especially since they have to add some Mountain West teams in order to survive. We're off to the Big 12, and then 3/4 of the 4 corner schools are like, we're coming with you. As long as the ACC still dissolves and we get some teams on the east side, I am more than okay with that, because here's the thing. If we just get those teams out of the Pac-12, that just makes our schedule even tougher as far as traveling. I don't know if I would like that or not. As a conference, the Big 12 would look great. But as a West Virginia fan, the travel would turn from brutal to almost impossible. So y'all know in the comment section, number one, what do you think the chances are that the Big Ten gets Cal and Stanford instead of Oregon and Washington? Number two, if the Big Ten does get Cal and Stanford, do you think Oregon and Washington would jump ship over to the Big 12? And would the Big 12 bring in those other 4 schools or 2 of those 4 schools with Oregon and Washington? And finally, the last thing, do you think if Big 12 gets those teams out of the Pac-12, that they're like, forget about the ACC, we're good to go, we don't need to add more teams, which I would not be happy about. That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.